It's April 4th here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dan. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. Starting with President Yoon Suk-yeol's impeachment ruling. South Korea's Constitutional Court will deliver its ruling on the impeached president over his botched martial law bid at 11 a.m. this morning. President Yoon has given notice that he will not attend the ruling. And police have raised their emergency alert level to the highest, known as a Kappo, as of midnight on Friday, putting all available officers on emergency standby. The Trump administration has revised its reciprocal tariff rate for South Korea to 25% from the initial 26%. Trump's so-called Liberation Day tariffs made Wall Street see its biggest one-day fall since 2020.
결연한 구국의 의지로 비상계엄을 선포하였습니다.
South Korea's Constitutional Court in the coming hour will rule on whether to dismiss or reinstate President Yoon after his martial law order last year triggered the National Assembly's impeachment motion against him. We connect with our correspondent Oh Soo-young at the court. Soo-young, aren't we less than an hour away from the ruling? Now, it seems relatively quiet today there.
Hi, Tabby. Yes, I'm at the Constitutional Court, where it seems relatively quiet to other days, but there's a thick atmosphere of tension. As today, there are extra layers of police lines, vehicles and metal barriers, keeping this place heavily fortified. That's because as of 11 a.m., the 8-member bench will be taking their seats in the main courtroom with Acting Chief Justice Moon Young-bae at the centre. He will then declare the start of the ruling, which would hopefully bring an end to the months-long constitutional battle between the executive and the legislature. Following President Yoon's martial law declaration in December of last year, the National Assembly passed an impeachment motion against him, accusing Yoon of declaring and conducting martial law illegally, disrupting the nation's constitutional order by deploying troops to parliament and state institutions, and attempting to arrest political and judicial figures. Meanwhile, Yoon stated that declaring martial law is an executive right of the president, and his hand was forced by the majority-led National Assembly's legislative abuses, budget cuts and sabotage against the government. The ruling itself now, it's going to be delivered by the Acting Chief Justice, but we don't know when he will reveal the final decision reached by the bench. But the order of which he delivers the verdict may actually offer some early clues. Based on the past cases that we've seen so far, if the Justice shares the reasoning for the verdict first, it usually means there's been a unanimous decision. In former President Park Geun-hye's case in 2017, where the court unanimously agreed on her impeachment, the reading of the ruling took around 25 minutes. But if the final judgment is stated first, then it suggests a split decision with various justices sharing dissenting or concurring opinions. Now, that's what we saw last month during the ruling on Prime Minister Han Duck-soo's impeachment. So the style of the ruling is actually at the court's discretion, so we'll have to see if the bench follows these practices. If 6 or more of the justices determine that even one of the grounds for impeachment constitutes a serious violation of the Constitution, President Yoon will be removed from office. The verdict takes immediate legal effect the moment it's read aloud, coming 111 days after the case began. Now, President Yoon himself will not be attending the court session, considering the logistics and security complications involved. So he's likely to be watching from his official residence as it's all broadcast live. Now, at the court today, 20 public gallery seats are open to members of the public, and an online lottery saw over 96,000 people register for a spot, meaning the rate of competition was 4,800 to 1.
So the fate of the president and the nation hangs in the balance of the Constitutional Court's decision on his impeachment today. Soo-young, walk us through the possible scenarios.
Right. Well, if the court upholds the impeachment, then President Yoon will become the nation's second leader in history to be removed from office following President Park Geun-hye's removal from power in 2017. So the scenario would be, in this case, his removal effective immediately. So Prime Minister Han Duck-soo would continue as acting president until an early election is held within 60 days. Yoon would vacate his office for good and leave the official residence in Yongsan-gu district. As a removed president, he would lose all post-presidential privileges, no pension, no office, no staff support, and no burial rights at the National Cemetery. Only basic personal security would remain. But on the flip side, if the impeachment is dismissed with prejudice, President Yoon would retain his status and immediately resume his duties. He'd then go back to his presidential office to make a public address, and his first tasks are expected to focus on foreign policy and engagement with the United States. He may also begin laying out proposals for constitutional and political reform, as pledged during his final court appearance. With this impeachment case closed for good, Yoon, however, still would face investigations regarding his December 3rd martial law declaration, but during his presidency would be immune from charges other than for treason and insurrection. Now, a third scenario is the court dismissing the case without prejudice, or simply put, dropping the case for now due to legal or procedural issues. The president would return to office, but the National Assembly could reattempt impeachment in the future. So whatever the outcome might be today, it will bring an end to the months of uncertainty and hopefully amount to a constructive step forward for a mature Korean democracy.
Of course. Thank you, Soo-young. We'll talk again when the ruling is out, of course. And the atmosphere near the court is heated, with thousands of South Koreans rallying for and against the impeached president. Our correspondent Park Gun-woo is out there. Gun-woo, it seems the entire country is, of course, restless, but aren't things looking a lot more hectic there?
Good morning, Tommy. As you mentioned, I'm pretty sure that you can hear the loud noises coming from the massive protests taking place here in front of Anguk Station, the closest station near the Constitutional Court. And I've been standing here for several hours now since the early morning, where protesters, mostly in favor of President Yoon's impeachment, continue their passionate chant without signs of stopping. Yoon supporters, on the other hand, have been protesting nearby until this morning, but most of them have now moved to Hannam-dong, where the presidential residence is located at. And while continuing their protest, they will be watching a live broadcast of President Yoon's impeachment ruling. The atmosphere here, though, is quite intense, I can say. The voices are getting even louder compared to just a few minutes ago. And as it's only less than an hour left until a decision is announced, the crowd is getting even larger, which is very understandable given that it's a historic moment right now. And according to reports, thousands of people have registered as official protesters for today, as well as places where I am, Gwanghwamun, and also near Yoon's residence. Many of these protesters have been protesting around the clock, stressing that this is their last protest.
Gun-woo, that is why safety and security measures are absolutely crucial, right?
That's true as well. So, as that's a most important thing right now, the police have raised their emergency alert to Kapo, which is the largest alert that allows for 100% of police mobilization forces and over 200 riot police units, along with 14,000 personnel, and has been dispatched just in Seoul, along with special forces also on duty to prevent any terrorist or drone attacks here at the site. And a 150-meter radius around the Constitutional Court has been locked down with police vehicles, designating the area as a vacuum zone, with protesters prohibited from entering. And Anguk Station, the nearest station, as I mentioned, where I'm standing right now, is currently closed, and several schools and tourist attractions have shut down temporarily as well. We were told that nearby businesses have either shut down or are operating remotely for the day due to possible risk. But I saw some places open this morning. These measures are reminiscent of those put in place 8 years ago when former President Park Geun-hye's impeachment was upheld by the court, as 4 people died that day during clashes after the ruling was decided.
Gun-woo, thank you for reporting from the ground. You also stay safe there. So we now have less than an hour to find out the outcome of the ruling. Only the 8 justices at the Constitutional Court know the fate of the South Korean leader now. We turn to Professor Baek In-seok in the meantime. Good morning.
Good morning to you.
Professor Baek, I have to ask, how did the 8 justices spend the morning this morning up until the ruling at 11 a.m.? What are they doing at this moment, do you think?
I gather they are having their last conference this morning. I also gather that they had conference twice yesterday in the morning and the afternoon, and also the day before. So my sense is that there isn't anything due to be done, but maybe the justices are adding final touches to the court opinion. Now, depending on how the court comes out in the ruling, if it is a unanimous decision, that I think there's a less work to be done. But if it is not a unanimous situation, then there are multiple opinions, opinion of the court, excuse me, the majority opinion, separate opinion, dissenting opinion. And of course, as you know, every word counts in a case of this magnitude and ramification. So basically, the justices are working on the opinion or opinions and adding final touches. I think they are on it at the moment during the final conference.
So it's not over until it's really over. Now, nearly 100,000 people in Korea applied to attend today's ruling with only 20 seats available. I have to say, this is a lot more than just a ruling for South Korean and South Korean people, isn't it?
That is true. Compared to 2 previous impeachment cases, the first ever impeachment case against a sitting president was against President No, in which the motion to impeach was denied by the court. That was the first, so it was that first that was the significance of the case. The second impeachment case was against President Park Geun-hye, and the Constitutional Court upheld the motion to impeach. So the significance of that case was, of course, the first time that sitting president was removed by the Constitutional Court. Now, this case is of much more grave in terms of the constitutional issues being raised. President Park's case was essentially influence peddling situation, but here the issues are much more grave in legally, constitutionally, politically speaking. And at the same time, unlike 2 previous cases, President Yoon was very active in defending his case, participating in the hearings, not only responding to the arguments against him put together by the National Assembly, the petitioner, but he was basically accusing the opposition party along the way and appealing to his supporters. So I think that raised the stake a lot higher. Not only that, this case interest goes beyond the country because South Korea's democracy has been an inspiration to many countries around the world, especially to the developing countries. So obviously, we expect those countries to have a very close watch on what happens. And not only that, the trade partners, allies, just want to know what's going on and what would happen.
Right.
And so this case goes beyond the South Korea, and we'll see.
And Yoon has managed to keep himself very quiet and silent, almost too silent on this big day. Now, quite a strategic move, would you say?
Yeah, but one would expect he would have said something, something in support of the court, whichever the ruling comes out. But he has maintained silence, as you described. What was behind it, it's hard to tell. But on the other hand, saying anything at this stage in a very volatile situation like this might not have been a very prudent move on his part. So while one would expect the president would have said something in support of the ruling of the court in a general matter, but on the other hand, one would maybe commend him for having kept some silence. in order to not to further aggravate already polarized situation in the country.
Right, he doesn't want to take that risk at this difficult time. Now, we should expect him to say something, though, right after the ruling, right? Or will it depend on the outcome of the ruling?
Of course, it depends on the outcome. If the court dismisses the motion or denies the motion, either way, in which case he would be reinstated, then he would move back to his office. Then we would expect him to say something officially at that point, so sooner rather than later. Now, if the court upholds the motion to impeach, in which case he would be removed from his office at the moment that the court declares the main holding. Then I think it's harder to predict exactly when he would say. He would have to move out of his official residence. He may not do so, and he will not be able to physically to do so today. In President Park's case, because her private residence had not been ready for her move-in, so it was 2 days after the court's ruling that she left the official residence. As far as I know, President Yoon and his security team didn't do anything to his private residence, where he stayed in only a few weeks of his presidency. So I think even the court upheld the motion to impeach and he is removed the office, he may have to stay in the official residence for a couple of days until his private residence is ready. At what point he would say, maybe at the time when he's leaving the official residence, probably that's more likely scenario, as far as I can tell.
Who knows? Well, Professor Beck, security and safety measures are deemed absolutely vital, especially today. Now, that is why the vacuum zone around the court has been expanded, right?
Right, that's what I gather. And what happened in the immediate aftermath of the court ruling in the President Park's case, some of his supporters engaged in extreme violent act, leading to some people actually dying in the process, which was a shame. I really do hope that something like that would not happen this time. I think this is the occasion, whichever ruling that the court issues, I really do hope that Korean people can show to the world that we do have a mature constitutional legal system, and at the same time, the people of South Korea is mature. So I really do hope that something of that nature wouldn't happen this time.
Indeed, and also to fully practice the idea of a democracy for South Korea and also for us, the South Korean people. Professor Beck, thank you so much for taking your time to be with us on this big day. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
The White House has finalized its reciprocal tariff on South Korea at 25%, following confusion brought on by the discrepancy between the listing on Trump's panel announcement and the executive order annex. Our Lee Soo-jin has this report.
The reciprocal tariff imposition on South Korea has been finalized at 25%. On Thursday local time, the annex to the executive order on the White House website was amended to 25% from 26%. The amendment was made without a clear explanation. This comes after a panel presented by U.S. President Donald Trump at a Rose Garden event the day before listed the reciprocal tariff on South Korea as 25%, while the annex of the executive order stated as 26%, causing confusion about the discrepancy. When the White House initially did not indicate any intention to make a correction, the South Korean government demanded one, arguing that under Trump's formula, Korea's tariff rate should be 25% and not 26%. And this 1% difference is significant as it amounts to roughly $1.3 billion. Meanwhile, the impact of the announcement of Trump's larger-than-expected tariffs was immediate in stock markets, with Wall Street on Thursday seeing its worst day since the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020. The S&P 500 plunged nearly 5% and the Dow Jones 4%, both suffering the biggest one-day drop since June 2020. And the tech-heavy Nasdaq dropped nearly 6%, the largest decline since March 2020. Trump, however, in response to a question about the severe impact of his tariffs, dismissed concerns.
The markets are going to boom, the stock is going to boom, the country is going to boom, and the rest of the world wants to see, is there any way they can make a deal?
But market analysts are less optimistic.
It is nerve-wracking to watch markets go down by a couple of % in a day, but my career spans back to the 1987 crash. So this one still ranks up there as very concerning anytime markets are down with this amount of vehemence, if you will, especially on unexpected news. It's worrisome.
Analysts say the sharp decline reflects investor concerns that U.S. companies reliant on global supply chains could soon be subject to retaliatory measures from trading partners. In the meantime, Trump says he's open to negotiations. 이수진, Arirang News.
The top envoys of Seoul, Washington, and Tokyo met in Brussels on Thursday to hold talks on threats from North Korea and also ways to promote economic cooperation. Lee Seung-jae has the details.
The top envoys of Seoul, Washington, and Tokyo held talks in Brussels on Thursday, a day after U.S. President Donald Trump announced his reciprocal tariffs. The meeting between Foreign Minister Cho Tae-yeol, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and Japanese Foreign Minister Takeshi Iwaya took place on the sidelines of a foreign ministerial meeting of members of NATO and its partner countries. According to Seoul's foreign ministry, Cho expressed deep concern over the U.S. reciprocal tariffs, asking the U.S. to consider the implications for the alliance as well as investments in the U.S. In response, Rubio reiterated President Trump's stance that the reciprocal tariffs have been introduced to readjust the trade imbalance. However, the U.S. Secretary of State stressed that it's now important to hold new negotiations based on the readjusted levies, raising the possibility that talks could take place between Seoul and Washington on adjusting the 25% tariff. Meanwhile, Foreign Minister Cho also called for cooperation among NATO member countries in dealing with the North Korea-Russia military alliance, which he says could lead to a security decoupling between the U.S. and its allies. He further called on member countries to prevent Pyongyang from believing it can secure advanced military technology that can directly threaten the global community. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Choi Ji-hee, and this is The World Now. Starting in the Middle East, amid expanded military operations by Israel in Gaza, an Israeli airstrike on a former school being used as a shelter in Gaza City has resulted in significant casualties. On Thursday local time, an Israeli airstrike hit the Dar al-Arqam school in the Tufa neighborhood of Gaza City, which was serving as a shelter for displaced individuals. According to the Gaza Health Ministry, at least 27 people were killed, including 14 children and 5 women. It says over 70 others were injured. The Israeli military said that the strike targeted a Hamas command and control center and asserted that measures were taken to minimize civilian harm. The incident is part of a broader escalation, with Israeli forces expanding strikes and issuing evacuation orders across Gaza. Hungary has announced its intention to withdraw from the International Criminal Court as the country's prime minister welcomed Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's official visit to Budapest. Netanyahu had received an arrest warrant from the ICC in 2024. On Thursday local time, Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban declared plans for Hungary to withdraw from the ICC, calling the court a political institution. The announcement was made during Netanyahu's first visit to Europe since the ICC in May 2024 issued an arrest warrant against him and his former defense minister, as well as 3 other top officials of Hamas for alleged war crimes. Orban stated that the withdrawal process would begin immediately, involving legislative action and formal notification to the United Nations. The procedure is expected to take about 1 year. Netanyahu praised Hungary's decision, describing it as bold and principled. Meanwhile, in Brussels, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio met with Danish Foreign Minister Lars Løkke Rasmussen on the sidelines of a NATO meeting on Thursday local time for their first high-level talks since President Donald Trump's renewed interest in acquiring Greenland. Rasmussen firmly stated that Denmark would object to any U.S. claims on Greenland, while Rubio reaffirmed the strong relationship between the U.S. and Denmark. Shortly after their meeting, Denmark's Prime Minister, who is also on a visit to Greenland, voiced support on Thursday for enhanced Arctic defense collaboration with the United States, but firmly dismissed U.S. attempts to annex the Arctic island.
Today is Cheongmyeong, the 5th of 6 spring terms. And just like the name suggests, we are in for a clear and sunny spring day with big temperature differences. So a light jacket will definitely come in handy. However, the air is not the best for us in the western regions again. The capital area should be dealing with high levels of ultrafine dust all day today. Afternoon highs will be similar to slightly higher today, topping out at 16 degrees here in Seoul, Daegu, Gyeongju at 18 degrees under sunny skies. However, dry weather alerts are still in place for parts of Innan, Gyeongsang-Bukdo province, so please be careful with anything that could spark a fire. Tomorrow is Arbor Day, and we're expecting 5 to 20 millimeters of rain across much of the country starting at dawn. That should be a great help for dusty skies and dry conditions. Now, we're expecting some cooler temperatures tomorrow with rain, but the warmth and sunny skies return on Sunday.
That's it we have for now, but we will be back shortly with our special coverage on President Yoon's impeachment ruling at 10:40 a.m. Korea time. Until then, goodbye.